During the rage virus pandemic that transformed many British citizens into zombies, Donald Harris, often called Don, and his wife Alice, along with 4 other people, were hiding in a house on the outskirts of London. Don and Alice were separated from their 2 children, who happened to be in Spain on a school trip when the pandemic began spreading across the country. They had received information that their children were safe because the rage virus had not yet reached Spain. One evening, while Don and the others were eating together, there was suddenly a frantic knocking sound at the door. It sounded like a child calling for help. Initially, they hesitated to open it, but because Alice insisted, Don finally opened the door and brought the child inside the house. The child said he came from a place miles away, and that his parents had been bitten by the zombies. He managed to run as fast as he could until he arrived there. Not long after, a woman in the house grew curious and decided to peek outside. Suddenly, a zombie attacked her hand with a bite, and she instantly turned into a zombie herself. She then attacked Jacob, one of the men hiding in the house. Don struck the infected woman with a crowbar and told his wife and the others to leave at once. Don tried to hold off the zombies, but more of them continued to appear. Realizing he could not fend them all off, he planned to escape together with Alice. However, when he went to get Alice, she was still busy looking for the child they had just rescued. When she finally found him, a zombie managed to break into the room. The zombie charged toward Don, causing him to slam the door shut, leaving his wife locked inside with the infected. Don then escaped through the window and ran as fast as he could. He kept running as more zombies began to arrive and chase him. Soon Don saw Jacob trying to flee using a small boat. Don jumped in immediately, while Jacob failed to climb aboard and fell into the river. As Don attempted to help him, Jacob was suddenly pulled underwater by a zombie lurking there. Within moments, Jacob became infected. Don kicked Jacob away and successfully sped off in the boat. At this point, we see a timeline of how the rage virus spread throughout Britain. 15 days after the virus emerged, almost all British territory was placed under quarantine. By the 28th day, nearly everything lay in ruins due to the outbreak. During the 5th week, those who had turned into zombies began to die off from starvation. By the 11th week, American troops arrived in London. By the 18th week, almost all British regions had been declared free of the virus. By the 24th week, survivors started to rebuild their cities, and by the 28th week, when this story begins. In London, as usual, the soldiers stood guard on rooftop posts while joking with one another. A plane was seen approaching, and upon landing, a woman named Scarlett, a medical expert, observed as new arrivals disembarked. Among them were siblings Tammy and Andy, who were undergoing a rapid test supervised by Scarlett. It appeared that Andy had a certain condition. His eyes were of different colors, a trait inherited from his mother. After completing the rapid test, they departed by train toward the Green Zone, a place declared clear of any remaining infected. When they arrived at the station, they were overjoyed to finally reunite with their father after so long without contact. The 3 of them traveled together to a secured building, where Don now lived in one of its units. Don worked as a technician, giving him access to various parts of the facility. He explained that in a few months, they would no longer be able to stay at their old home since it lay outside the safe zone. Andy asked about the whereabouts of their mother, and Don began to recount what had happened to him and Alice. He claimed that he and Alice had managed to escape to the outskirts of London, but they were soon attacked by zombies. Here, Don lied to his children, saying he had been forced to leave Alice behind and had seen her get bitten. He insisted there was nothing else he could have done. That night, Andy woke from a nightmare in which he saw a vision of his mother turning into a zombie. He told Tammy about it and then went back to sleep by her side. The next morning, the 2 of them decided to sneak out of the safe zone and go to their old house. They found a motorbike parked outside and used it to travel. Their escape was noticed by Sergeant Doyle, one of the soldiers, who immediately reported it to headquarters. Tammy and Andy proceeded into their former home, searching for any valuables or personal belongings. While exploring his old bedroom, Andy discovered someone hiding behind the bed. Initially, he thought it was Tammy playing a prank on him. However, it turned out to be Alice, who had survived the zombie attack. She and Andy hugged, but her embrace was unusually tight, making Andy struggle to breathe. Overwhelmed, Andy quickly backed away from his mother and ran out of the room, only to find a group of people wearing protective equipment standing in front of the house. These people then took Alice to a medical facility. Because they still suspected that she was infected, she was restrained while under observation. Scarlett examined Alice and noticed something unusual. Her eyes occasionally took on a more sinister look, indicating that the virus existed in her bloodstream. However, for some reason, Alice did not display the typical aggressive changes shown by the infected. Even so, she could still transmit the virus. Meanwhile, Don received word that the soldiers had found both of his children and his wife alive. He hurried to see Tammy and Andy, but Tammy was very upset at him for lying about their mother's fate. Soon after, Don secretly entered the room where Alice was being held without anyone else knowing. He apologized, explaining how he had been paralyzed by fear at the time. Alice appeared to understand and forgave him. They shared a kiss, unaware that Alice still harbored the rage virus within her. Don began to exhibit alarming symptoms almost immediately, transforming into one of the infected. He then attacked Alice, who was still tied down and had no way to defend herself. Once infected, Don left the room and assaulted several of the soldiers on duty. The commanding officer, realizing what was happening, ordered the soldiers to enact a Code Red protocol. The soldier assigned to watch Tammy and Andy stepped away to respond to the chaos, only to re-enter moments later fully infected, intending to attack the siblings. Scarlett arrived in time to save them, leading them out of the area as everyone evacuated. While trying to bring Tammy and Andy to the soldiers' secure checkpoint, panicked crowds surged, and Andy became separated from the other two. He ended up in a basement area with a group of civilians who were locked inside by the soldiers. When the situation grew extremely chaotic, Andy heard loud banging on the basement door. Suddenly the door burst open, revealing the infected Don. He rushed in and attacked the people there. Andy fled, managing to climb into a nearby ventilation duct. Those who panicked succeeded in escaping the basement and ran out into the open. The soldiers attempted to contain the infected by shooting them, but there were so many people in the area that they could no longer distinguish who was infected and who was not. They also began losing many of their own unit. As a result, the commanding officer authorized his entire team to fire at will on everyone without exception. Sergeant Doyle saw Andy almost get attacked by a zombie and promptly fired at it, allowing Andy to get away and enter another building. Doyle then came down from his rooftop perch and rejoined other survivors inside the building. To their surprise, Tammy and Scarlett were also hiding there, and thus the group reunited. Everyone questioned why the soldiers were also attacking non-infected civilians. Scarlett explained that the Code Red had 3 stages. First, eliminate the infected. Second, enforce a complete lockdown. And if both stages failed, the 3rd stage was indiscriminate extermination. Moments later, Doyle appeared, informing them that they could only remain hidden until daybreak. By then, the soldiers would have orders to blanket bomb the area for complete extermination. Doyle then led the group on a risky escape, receiving a communication from Flynn, his friend piloting a helicopter. Flynn warned that bombing operations were starting soon, giving Doyle only 4 minutes to get out. As they ran, a sniper began firing at them. Scarlett was wounded in the leg. In response, Doyle asked a man named Sam to distract the sniper by running in a zigzag pattern so he could take the shot. Panicking, Sam hesitated, so Andy took a chance and sprinted in a zigzag. The sniper missed him, which gave Doyle an opening to neutralize the threat. They managed to reach a tunnel just before the wave of bomber planes unleashed a sea of fire over the entire sector. Even after the bombing, many of the infected still roamed the streets. Doyle's group slipped through the ruins, heading toward the city's boundary, and leaving the protected green zone far behind. Eventually, they arrived at a decrepit amusement park that looked as if it had been abandoned for months, with no one around to maintain it. There, Doyle received a message from Flynn stating that some infected were moving near their location. The group quickly hid in the tall grass until Flynn's helicopter arrived. However, Sam panicked and rushed to board. His sudden movement caused the helicopter to lurch, forcing Flynn to battle for control. As the helicopter tilted toward the horde, its spinning rotor blades tore through swarms of infected, flinging them apart as though they were being swept into a powerful blender. Even so, a few infected managed to escape that gruesome fate and continued chasing Doyle and the others. They fled again, with Doyle dispatching several infected that threatened to overtake them. Flynn then radioed Doyle to say he could make a pickup at a nearby stadium. The group sprinted across open ground, but as they did, more infected appeared, and chemical weapons were deployed by the military to purge any remaining threats. Tammy, Andy, Scarlett, Doyle, and the others tried to find cover, finally ducking inside a car to shield themselves from the poisonous gas. Although many infected succumbed to the toxins, heavily equipped soldiers arrived to burn the bodies and ensure no one survived. Doyle and the others planned to drive out, but their car wouldn't start. Doyle got out to push. Just when the engine roared to life, a flamethrower unit drenched Doyle in fire, killing him. Scarlett immediately slammed her foot on the gas pedal to speed away, but a helicopter gunship began firing at them, forcing her to veer down into an underground station, where the car stalled out completely. With no other choice, they continued on foot, descending into the darkened subway tunnels. Relying solely on the infrared scope from Doyle's abandoned rifle, Scarlett guided Tammy and Andy in the darkness. Suddenly, Tammy and Andy slipped on the stairs. Scarlett separated from them for a moment. When she caught sight of Tammy again, a zombie attacked Scarlett, and she had no chance to escape. The infected swiftly overpowered her, leaving her lifeless. Once it was done attacking Scarlett, the zombie moved on. Moments later, Tammy, now holding Doyle's rifle, caught sight of Andy calling out to her. But before she could reach him, the zombie lunged at Andy and bit him. Horrified, Tammy realized the zombie was actually Don, now fully consumed by the rage virus. Don then charged at Tammy, who shot him without hesitation. She ran over to Andy, who had been bitten. Worried he would change into one of the infected, Andy tried to keep away from his sister. But just like their mother, Andy's blood somehow granted him a unique immunity. He carried the virus without losing his humanity. They managed to continue forward until they reached the stadium, where Flynn was waiting for Doyle. Seeing only Tammy and Andy, Flynn pointed his gun at them, wary of their condition. Realizing Doyle had not survived, Flynn decided to take the siblings on board. With no time to spare, he flew them far away from the military's reach. 28 days later, we see that the outbreak has made its way across the Channel and reached Paris, suggesting the terrifying spread of the rage virus has only just begun. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.